The town hall was packed with people. Folding chairs scraped against the wooden floor, and the hum of voices filled the air like a restless swarm. Everyone was waiting for the mayor to speak. Mayor Thomas was known for smiling wide, talking smooth, and doing little. His expensive suit gleamed under the stage lights as he adjusted the microphone, pretending to care. In the third row, David sat stiffly in his seat. A young black activist, he had grown tired of empty promises. He wore a plain black hoodie, his notebook tucked under his arm. His heart thudded in his chest as he waited for his turn to speak. He knew this was not just about him, it was about the families who lost brothers, sons, fathers to violence that the mayor ignored. When the microphone was finally passed his way, David stood tall. His voice trembled at first, but then it cut through the hall like a blade. "Mayor Thomas," he said, "you say you care about justice, but you care more about power. You smile for cameras while our people bleed in the streets. How many more deaths before you do something real?" Gasps rose from the crowd. The mayor's smile faltered for a second, but he quickly hid it with a practiced grin. "Young man, I admire your passion," the mayor said smoothly. "But change takes time." David shook his head. "Time is the one thing we don't have. Every week another body falls. Every week another family cries. And you stand there with your polished words and do nothing." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some clapped. Others whispered. The mayor's eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger hidden behind his grin. The security guard shifted uneasily near the stage. David lifted his notebook and read the last line he had written earlier that day. "The truth is, blood is already on the podium. And it's on your hands, Mayor Thomas." The hall erupted. Cheers. Shouts. Anger. Applause. The mayor's face turned red, but David had already handed back the microphone. He walked away, leaving his words hanging in the air like smoke that no one could clear. That night, David's face was everywhere. Clips of his speech spread online, replayed again and again. Young people called him brave. Older folks called him reckless. But no one could deny that his words had struck a nerve. And somewhere in the shadows, plans began to move against him. 2 nights later, David was walking home after a late meeting with other activists. The streets were quiet, the air heavy with summer heat. His footsteps echoed off brick walls. He didn't notice the black car that had been following him since he left the cafe. He turned down a narrow street. The car slowed. Its headlights dimmed. A door opened, and heavy footsteps followed. David's phone buzzed. It was his sister, Lisa. He answered quickly, whispering, "I'm almost home." But those were the last words she would hear from him. A sharp sound cracked the silence. Then another. David dropped the phone, his voice cut short. The car sped away, leaving only darkness behind. The next morning, the city woke to the news: activist David Johnson found dead. Lisa sat on the floor of her apartment, holding her brother's phone. Tears blurred her eyes as she replayed the last voicemail he had left. His voice was shaky but strong. "If anything happens to me, don't stop. Promise me, Lisa. Don't let them bury the truth." Those words became more than a message. They became a weapon. At rallies, Lisa played his voice over loudspeakers. Crowds grew. Anger spread. His words echoed across the city: "Don't let them bury the truth." The mayor tried to control the damage. He called it a tragedy, shook hands, and offered thoughts and prayers. But the more he spoke, the more people remembered David's words: "Blood is already on the podium." The rallies became marches. The marches became protests. David's name was painted on signs, written on walls, shouted in chants. His voice, recorded on an old phone, became louder than the mayor's speeches. And the higher the protests grew, the more desperate the mayor became to silence them. But the dead do not stay quiet when the living carry their words. The funeral drew more people than the church could hold. The small wooden building overflowed, and even the street outside filled with mourners. Some came with flowers, some with banners, some with nothing but tears. Lisa sat in the front pew, her hands clenched together so tightly her knuckles turned white. David's picture sat on the casket, his smile frozen in a moment of life. Beside it lay the notebook he carried everywhere. The pastor spoke about faith, justice, and sacrifice, but the only words people seemed to remember were not from the pastor, they were from David himself. After the service, Lisa stepped forward. Her legs trembled as she faced the crowd, but when she opened her brother's phone and pressed play, silence fell like a heavy curtain. David's voice filled the church. "If anything happens to me, don't stop. Promise me, Lisa. Don't let them bury the truth." The sound echoed against the walls, bounced off the stained glass windows, and landed deep in every heart present. People wept openly. Some clenched their fists in anger. Others raised their hands as though swearing an oath. The mayor was not at the funeral. Instead, he had released a statement through the evening news, saying David's death was unfortunate and promising that the police would look into it. But in the crowd, no one believed him. They whispered to one another that the mayor's hands were not just dirty, they were soaked. That night, as candles burned on sidewalks and chants rose into the summer air, Lisa stood among the protesters. She held her brother's phone high, letting his words spill into the night again. The chant caught fire. "Don't let them bury the truth. Don't let them bury the truth." The mayor's face appeared on every sign, his smile crossed out with thick red paint. His polished speeches were drowned out by a dead man's voice. And though David's body lay in the ground, his fight had only begun. The protests grew louder with each passing day. What began as a small group holding candles outside City Hall turned into crowds that filled entire streets. People carried hand-painted signs, their voices rising together in waves. Some signs showed David's face. Others had his words written in bold black letters, "Blood on the podium." Lisa had never been a leader before. She was quiet, the type who kept her head down at work and avoided arguments. But something had shifted inside her. Every time she heard her brother's voice play through that old phone, she felt a fire she could not ignore. She found herself at the front of marches, holding a megaphone, calling out chants until her throat was raw. The mayor, meanwhile, grew restless. Behind closed doors, he barked at his advisors. "Why isn't this dying down? It's one man. One activist." His voice cracked with irritation as he paced across his office. His aides muttered about optics and timing, but no one dared to speak the truth to him, that David's death had turned him from just a voice into a symbol. The police tried to contain the marches, lining streets with barricades and shields. But the more they tried to push back, the more people pushed forward. Videos of officers shoving young protesters spread online. Clips of mothers screaming at police went viral. Every image added fuel to the fire. One night, as Lisa walked home after a rally, a car slowed beside her. Her heart raced. She pulled her hood tighter, gripping her brother's phone in her pocket like a weapon. The window rolled down, and a man's voice said softly, "You need to stop this before it's too late." Lisa froze, staring into the shadowed face inside the car. Before she could respond, the car sped off into the dark. Her hands shook as she unlocked her phone. She replayed David's last message again, his voice steady, commanding, "Don't let them bury the truth." She whispered to herself, "I won't." But deep inside, fear crawled over her skin. She knew now, they were watching her. And if David's death had been a warning, she was next on their list. The next rally drew the largest crowd yet. The city square was filled shoulder to shoulder, thousands of voices rising together. From rooftops and windows, more people watched, some cheering, some recording with their phones. The sound was thunderous, the kind of noise that shakes glass and rattles the bones of those in power. Lisa stood at the front, clutching her brother's phone in one hand and the megaphone in the other. Her heart pounded, but when she looked out at the sea of faces, faces young and old, black and white, tired and angry, she felt courage flood her chest. She raised the phone, pressed play, and let David's words pour into the air. "Blood is already on the podium. And it's on your hands, Mayor Thomas." The crowd roared. Chants of blood on the podium echoed through the streets, bouncing off stone buildings like drums of war. Some people cried, some screamed, and some stood silently with their fists raised. Far away, in his office high above the square, Mayor Thomas watched from the window. His jaw was tight, his face pale with fury. "He's dead," the mayor muttered, almost to himself. "Why does his voice still haunt me?" His aide, a thin man with nervous eyes, spoke carefully. "Sir, maybe it's time to step down before this ruins everything." The mayor spun around, his voice sharp as broken glass. "Step down? Never. I built this city. I own this city. And I won't be chased out by a dead man and his little sister." Meanwhile, below, the police line tightened. Officers in black gear, shields raised, helmets glinting under streetlights. They stood like a wall between power and the people. Lisa could see the fear in the eyes of the crowd, but she also saw their determination. She lifted the megaphone and shouted, "We are not afraid. We will not be silent." The crowd erupted again, stomping and chanting. Suddenly, a loud bang split the air. Smoke filled the square as tear gas canisters clattered to the ground. People screamed. Chaos erupted. The police advanced. Lisa's lungs burned as she stumbled backward, clutching the phone to her chest. She could hear her brother's voice still playing through the speaker, steady and strong even as people scattered, "Don't let them bury the truth." The words cut through the chaos like a beacon. And Lisa knew this was no longer just a protest. It was a battle. The square was a battlefield. Smoke rolled across the pavement, making eyes sting and throats ache. People coughed, stumbled, and ran for cover, but many stayed, locking arms, refusing to be pushed back. Lisa crouched low, covering her mouth with her sleeve. The phone was still in her hand, David's voice faint beneath the roar of the crowd. A young man grabbed her arm. "Come on, this way," he shouted. He led her down a narrow alley where a group of protesters had gathered to regroup. Some had soaked rags pressed to their faces, others poured water over their eyes. Fear rippled through them, but no one spoke of quitting. Lisa leaned against the brick wall, catching her breath. She wiped her tears, half from the gas and half from the weight of everything. "They're trying to break us," she said, her voice shaking. "But we can't let them." An older woman with silver braids stepped forward. "Child, they've been trying to break us for generations. They never succeed. You carry your brother's fire now. Don't let them take that from you." The word sank into Lisa's chest like iron. She stood straighter, her grip tightening around the phone. "Then we fight harder," she whispered. Back at City Hall, Mayor Thomas slammed his fists against the desk. "This ends tonight. Do you hear me? Tonight." His security chief nodded, but his face showed unease. "Sir, the whole city is watching. Every camera, every news station. If we push too hard, this could backfire." The mayor leaned forward, his voice low and venomous. "Then make it look like they are the violent ones. I don't care how. Just make the people turn against them." By midnight, headlines were already spinning. Protest turns violent. Clips played on television showing fires, broken windows, and angry faces. But what the news didn't show were the hands that lit those fires, the undercover men who slipped into the crowd and vanished after the damage was done. Lisa saw the reports on her cracked phone screen, fury boiling in her chest. She turned to the others. "They're twisting the story. They want to paint us as criminals. We need to show them the truth." She lifted David's phone, holding it high so everyone could hear his voice again. The words carried into the night, clear and sharp, "Don't let them bury the truth." And though the city was burning with lies, that one sentence became the spark for something greater. The morning after the chaos, the city felt different. Smoke still lingered over some streets, and the smell of burned rubber clung to the air. But instead of fear, there was a strange kind of electricity running through the neighborhoods. People whispered David's name as if it had become a code, a secret password that connected strangers. Lisa woke to the sound of pounding on her door. She froze, her heart racing. For a moment she thought it was the police. But when she opened it, she found 3 young men she had seen at the rally. They looked nervous, but their eyes were fierce. "Lisa," one of them said quickly, "we have something you need to see." They led her to a small apartment 2 blocks away. Inside, the air was thick with the glow of computer screens. A woman in glasses sat typing furiously, her walls plastered with wires and Reuters. She didn't look up when they entered. "We pulled video from last night," one of the young men explained. "The news says protesters lit the fires, but that's not what really happened." The woman hit a key, and grainy footage filled the screen. Lisa leaned closer. The video showed men in dark clothing smashing windows and tossing bottles into the street. But then, in a brief flash of light, the camera caught one of their faces. It wasn't a protester. It was a uniformed officer, his badge half visible before he yanked his mask back down. Lisa's stomach dropped. "They planted it," she whispered. "They staged it to blame us." The woman in glasses turned to her, finally speaking. "If this goes public, it'll destroy their story. But it's dangerous. They'll come after whoever leaks it." Lisa felt her brother's phone heavy in her pocket, as though it were reminding her of the promise she had made. She swallowed hard. "Then we leak it everywhere. Every screen, every phone, every corner of this city. They can't silence us all." The room went quiet, the weight of her words hanging in the air. For the first time, Lisa didn't feel like she was just carrying her brother's voice. She was becoming her own. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The city was bracing for another night. And this time, Lisa knew the truth had teeth. By evening, the footage was everywhere. The group of young hackers had moved fast, spreading the video through social media, dropping it into group chats, even projecting it on the side of a downtown building. People gasped as they watched officers in disguise light fires and smash glass. The story the mayor tried to sell crumbled like dust in their hands. Crowds poured into the streets again, larger than ever. This time, they were angrier, but also more united. They marched not only with signs but with proof. Phones glowed like torches, each screen showing the same damning clip on repeat. Lisa walked among them, her brother's phone raised in one hand, a borrowed megaphone in the other. "The truth is out," she cried. "They tried to bury us, but now the whole city knows." Her voice cracked, but the crowd answered with a roar that shook the pavement. From the balcony of City Hall, Mayor Thomas watched with clenched teeth. His aides crowded around, panicked, whispering about resignations and investigations. "They've seen the video," one said. "Sir, this isn't going away." The mayor's face twisted with rage. "Then we hit back harder. Arrest them all. Make an example." The orders went out quickly. That night, the police moved through neighborhoods, dragging activists from their homes. Vans with no markings prowled the streets, swallowing people whole. Fear rippled through the city like a storm front. Lisa barely escaped. A friend pulled her through a back alley just as officers pounded on her apartment door. Her heart hammered in her chest as she crouched behind trash bins, listening to boots stomp past. She clutched David's phone so tightly it left marks in her palm. "We can't go back to our homes," the friend whispered. "They're coming for everyone now." Lisa nodded, her throat dry. The city felt darker than ever, but she could still hear her brother's voice in her head, "Don't let them bury the truth." And as the vans rolled through the night, filling with the voices of the silenced, Lisa realized something chilling: David had been right all along. Blood was already on the podium, and more would follow if she failed. The city became a cage. Police patrols circled like vultures, vans parked at corners, and helicopters droned overhead at night. Neighbors whispered through locked doors, afraid of who might be listening. Lisa moved like a shadow. Every hour she switched locations, staying with friends, allies, sometimes complete strangers who offered their basements or spare couches. The resistance was no longer just a movement in the streets, it was an underground network of people bound together by David's words. In one safe house, Lisa sat with a group of college students who were printing leaflets. "They can shut down the news, they can twist TV," one said, sliding stacks of paper into boxes, "but they can't stop paper. They can't stop walls. We plaster this everywhere, they'll choke on it." Lisa nodded, exhausted but burning inside. "We're not just fighting lies," she said. "We're fighting for memory. Every flyer, every chant, every screen that plays David's words, it's proof they failed to erase him." Outside, someone banged on the door. The room froze. Lisa's hand went to her brother's phone, thumb trembling over the play button. The knocking grew louder. Then a voice shouted, "It's us!" A friend opened the door to reveal more activists, sweaty and scared. "They're planning mass arrests tomorrow," one of them panted. "We need to move fast." The next day, the city woke to flyers covering every wall. On bus stops, traffic poles, storefronts, even police barricades, David's face stared back. Beneath it, bold black words, "Blood on the podium." When the mayor saw it, he slammed his desk so hard a glass cracked. "Arrest her. Arrest them all. I want this cancer cut out before it spreads." But the spread was already beyond his reach. Workers carried the flyers into their factories. Teachers slipped them to students. Street vendors taped them to their carts. The city itself had become a protest, alive with David's presence. Lisa watched from a rooftop, tears stinging her eyes. The city below was glowing with his memory. "You're still here, David," she whispered. "They'll never silence you now." That night, Lisa dreamed of her brother. He stood in the middle of a dark street, his notebook in his hand. He didn't speak, but his eyes burned with urgency. When she tried to reach him, the ground between them cracked open. She woke gasping, clutching his phone to her chest. The dream felt like a warning. By morning, word spread that several of the city's most respected pastors, teachers, and even business owners had joined the marches. This wasn't just about activists anymore, it was the whole community rising. The marches swelled until even the police line looked nervous. Officers shifted, shields heavy in their hands, their faces pale behind the glass of their helmets. For the first time, Lisa noticed some of them lowering their eyes, refusing to meet the gaze of the people they were ordered to silence. Inside City Hall, the mayor's allies were fracturing. Some wanted him to resign quietly before things turned worse. Others whispered about deals to save themselves. But Thomas clung to power like a drowning man clings to wreckage. "We hold the podium," he snapped in a meeting. "As long as I stand here, they can't take this city from me." Yet outside his office walls, that was exactly what was happening. Lisa sat in a basement with a dozen others, listening to the radio crackle with reports of protests spreading to nearby towns. The movement was no longer local, it was spreading like wildfire. A young boy, no more than 12, sat in the corner holding a small handmade sign. It read simply, "David lives." Lisa stared at it, her throat tightening. "He does," she whispered. "Every time we speak, every step we take, he lives." The pressure on City Hall grew unbearable. Crowds gathered day and night, chanting, singing, demanding. At night, candles flickered in the windows of houses across the city, tiny flames burning against the dark. Then came the turning point. One evening, as the mayor tried to deliver a speech from the podium, the crowd's chanting drowned him out completely. His words vanished into the roar. Someone in the crowd held up a speaker, and David's voice filled the air once more, "Blood is already on the podium. And it's on your hands, Mayor Thomas." The mayor's face froze. His voice faltered. Cameras caught the sweat dripping down his forehead, the twitch in his jaw. For the first time, the man who thought he owned the city looked small. Lisa stood in the crowd, her heart pounding, her brother's voice rising like thunder above the lies. And in that moment, she realized the mayor's grip on power was slipping. The city wasn't his anymore. The mayor's downfall began not with a dramatic arrest but with silence. One morning, when he stepped out to face the press, the square was already filled with people. Thousands stood shoulder to shoulder, waiting, watching. He adjusted his tie, gripped the podium, and tried to begin. But his voice was swallowed instantly by a sound louder than any chant. David's words. Speakers hidden in the crowd, phones raised high, car radios blaring from the streets, everywhere his voice echoed, "Blood is already on the podium. And it's on your hands, Mayor Thomas." The mayor stammered, his words dissolving into the roar. His face turned red, then pale, then grey. He looked like a man drowning in his own lies. Behind him, his aides began to slip away, one by one, like rats leaving a sinking ship. The next day, national reporters swarmed the city. The video of undercover officers, the recordings of David's speech, and the images of tear gas in the square, all of it spread across the country. People outside the city began marching, carrying signs that read, "Don't let them bury the truth." The mayor tried to hold on. He gave one last televised address, his smile shaky, his voice brittle. But even as he spoke, people chanted outside his office, their cries bleeding into the broadcast. He slammed the microphone, stormed away, and that was the last time he stood at the podium. By week's end, he resigned. Not out of choice, but because even his own party had abandoned him. His power was gone, ripped away not by guns or violence, but by voices, by the words of a man he thought he had silenced. The night the news broke, the city erupted in celebration. People filled the streets, not with anger this time, but with song. Drums echoed, children danced, candles burned bright. Lisa stood among them, her chest heavy with relief and sorrow all at once. She lifted her brother's phone one last time. His voice rang out over the square, steady and strong, as though he were there among them, "Don't let them bury the truth." The crowd answered in unison, shouting back, "We won't." Tears streamed down Lisa's face. For the first time since David's death, they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of victory. Weeks passed. The city slowly healed. Broken windows were repaired, streets swept clean, but on many walls the flyers remained. David's face, his words, his fire, they had become part of the city's very skin. Lisa visited his grave on a quiet Sunday morning. She knelt, brushing dust from the stone, and placed his worn notebook on the grass. "You started something bigger than yourself," she whispered. "Bigger than me. You didn't die in vain." The wind stirred, carrying the faint sound of distant chanting. Even now, people still marched, still carried the truth. Lisa closed her eyes, resting her hand on the grave. For the first time, she felt peace. Months later, at the anniversary of David's death, the city held a rally in his honor. The square was filled again, not with anger this time, but with unity. Families stood together, holding candles. Leaders who once ignored the movement now stood beside Lisa, speaking his name with respect. When the time came, Lisa walked to the podium. She stood where the mayor once stood, where her brother had spoken his truth. Her voice shook as she began, but then it grew steady, carried by the strength of thousands. "My brother taught us something that can never be buried. The truth does not die. It lives in us, in our voices, in our courage. And today, we carry him with us, not in sorrow, but in victory." The crowd cheered, voices rising like thunder. For the first time, Lisa didn't feel like she was standing in David's shadow. She was standing beside him, carrying his torch. And as the night filled with music and light, the city understood something simple but eternal. The truth cannot be silenced.